We're going to go ahead and look at notes 1-5 here, and we have our essential question that says, how can we solve equations? So kind of thinking back to our very first unit when we solved equations. But we have with squares and cubes. So we need to be thinking about those inverse operations. The opposite of add is subtract. The opposite of multiply is divide. And now we're going to be looking at perfect squares and perfect cubes. Okay, so as we look here at Darius and he's restoring a square tabletop, okay, the area, remember area means we have a square, perfect square, or a square I should say, is 25 feet squared. So we can set that up as an equation to solve for the side lengths. Okay, so we're actually going through the solving process here. You know, I'm not a fan, we're just going to jump right into the try it. You know, I'm not a fan of the boxes. And I am going to talk to you in class because what I see here is I see a lot of these plus minus symbols. And we'll talk in class about why it's plus minus. Okay, so if we want to find the side length of this square, we know the area is 100 meters squared. So we are going to set up our equation as 100 equals s squared. We know length times width. The reason that it's s and s is because they're the same size, because it is a square. All sides of a square are the same length. And to actually go through the solving process of this, draw our line down the equal sign. We have to do our inverse operation. And the inverse of squaring a number is taking the square root. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So we have just s, and it is equal to the square root of 100 is 10. Again, they have this plus minus symbol in front of our box over here. We'll talk about the why behind what plus minus, what that means in class. So we can say each side of this square measures 10 meters. 10 meters. 10 times 10 is 100. Let's go ahead and look at our next example. So example 2, we're talking about volume, and we're talking about a perfect cube. Okay, so it's saying the volume of this like aquarium for this lizard or iguana is 343 feet cubed. So what would be the side lengths, the length, the width, and the height of this? So the opposite, or the inverse I should say, of cubing a number would be taking the cube root. Remember, whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. Now what you notice here is this one does not have a plus minus sign after the answer. And again, I will explain the why in class. So let's look at the try it. We draw our line down the equal sign. It says x cubed. The inverse of cubed is cube root. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. It cancels out to leave x all by itself. And the cube root of 64 is just 4. And we can type it into our calculator. Let's look at example 3. So sometimes we might get answers that are not perfect, meaning decimal answers. Okay, so as you look at example 3 and letter A, it says 50 is not a perfect square, so they just wrote their solution as the square root of 50. Okay, we could have typed that in to get the decimal answer and written the decimal answer if we would have liked. Okay, the biggest thing I want to look at with this try it is we have to look at what the power is. What is my exponent? Let's draw a line down the equal sign. And we can read it to ourselves out loud. It says a cubed. So the inverse of that is to take the cube root. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. And we get a equals, this one is going to be a decimal. So if we just want to write the cube root of 11, that would be fine. Okay, the cube root of 11 would be fine. If you want to type it in and write the decimal form down, you can do that as well. It's going to be between the whole number 2 and 3. So it's going to be 2 point something. And let's look at our last example here where it says solve c squared equals. So when we have squared, the square root is what we're going to do to both sides. So we just have c equals the square root of 27. We know that's going to be between the whole number 5 and 6. It's going to be a decimal, 5 point something. And because it is square root, again, I will talk about this in class, but it will be a plus minus. And I can explain that to you in class. So we're really just drawing lines down our equal sign and we're solving equations. And we've learned, we know that the opposite of add, subtract. The multiply is divide. And so now what are we looking at? We're looking at the opposite of squaring a number is taking the square root. And the opposite of cubing a number is taking the cube root. So we're doing inverse operations to get the letter by itself. And again, here's our key concept box on the top of page 34. And we'll practice solving these in class in pretty short notes. That's it.